There were some questions, there were people from the Indic society who were actually asking a question that what were the results of the commissions or the committee which were set up by Government of India, and what was the whether the Britishers at that point of time 1945-46, whether the Britishers have also established a committee to investigate the death issue of Bose, and what was the difference between, or whether there was any difference between the reports of the commission of the inquiry set up by the Britishers and later on by the Shah Nawaz committee. That was the question who the young people were asking actually.
Okay. No, that's good. I mean, it's better to turn it into a question answer format so that I can directly answer the questions.
Yes.
So, as far as this question is concerned, investigation is concerned, commissions and committees are concerned, as soon as the news of the so-called plane crash and Netaji's death in it was spread, of course, the British government reacted. I mean, and it is now well known that the Viceroy of India at that time, General Wavell, he wrote in his diary that I don't believe this, because this is exactly what somebody in his place would have done to escape from that area. So what the British government did is they sent teams, police teams for investigation, teams of intelligence agents for investigating on the ground, on the spot, as to what happened. And they contacted their American counterparts, and some investigation team was also sent on behalf of General MacArthur. So two teams were sent, from one from the Government of India, another team from Mountbatten, another from MacArthur, and they conducted their investigations. So none of the teams, I mean, they met up with the captured INA soldiers. They interrogated the Japanese soldiers who survived the so-called plane crash. They interrogated the Japanese technicians, engineers, and others in the Saigon aerodrome, from where the last flight was supposed to have taken off, and also at Taihoku, and people who were in Taihoku. And they interrogated Habibur Rahman. So a detailed interrogation process was conducted. And this was also the time when the INA soldiers were being brought back to Delhi for their trials. They were imprisoned, they were kept there for their trials. And the CSDIC, the British government's intelligence agency here for the army, in the detailed interrogation center which the British government had set up, they interrogated practically everybody who came back. So a detailed interrogation process was conducted for all these people, but none of them could establish with evidence that the plane crash actually took place and that Netaji died in it, along with 6 or 7 Japanese passengers. So, and what they highlighted, everyone highlighted, that there were several and very significant inconsistencies in their accounts, not only between person A, B, and C, but even when person A was talking at different points of time to different people, they were giving out different pieces of information. Their accounts were not matching. Habibur Rahman, who was the sole Indian eyewitness, the so-called eyewitness to the plane crash and Netaji's death, the intelligence reports were very clear. There was no doubt, and they wrote it down in their reports very clearly, that he is not speaking the truth. He is withholding information, and his accounts are not fully trustworthy, because he is resenting the interrogation process. He doesn't want to talk too much. He doesn't want to give out too much information. Somehow, some things he is hiding. So the British and the American investigations, these interrogations, they could never reach a final conclusion. Although you will somewhere in some places read that there was one particular guy called Figs, Colonel Figs, who wrote it out in his report that there was no doubt about Netaji's death. But the evidence he produced suffered from the same problems. That it when you compared the accounts given to Colonel Figs, on the basis of which he wrote down his report, the same accounts by the same people did not match the other accounts, or the accounts of the same people when they spoke to other people. For example, there were two doctors in the hospital where supposedly Netaji was treated, and the other plane crash sufferers were treated, the victims were treated. Now, this person told Figs that he had written the death certificate. But when the Japanese government interrogated him 10 years later, he said that I don't know anything about death certificate. I did not write it. So the same person, it was not an ordinary incident. A plane had crashed. There were victims, and there were many dead people. So, it's not something that you can easily forget. Least of all, a doctor forgetting whether he wrote the death certificate or not. It's not acceptable. It's not believable. But what Colonel Figs did, he took all these accounts as the last and final word, and he gave the verdict that Netaji had died in the crash. Now, Figs was later accused by Indians in Japan and also by Indian officials in Japan, in Tokyo Embassy and others of the INA, for embezzling the treasure of INA, funds of INA, in cahoots with some top leaders of the Indian Independence League, among which were SAIR. SAIR's name came up. Ramamurthy, who was the head of the IIL in Japan at the time, in Tokyo, his name came up, and he was accused of that. So, although he wrote it in his report, that is a single piece of report which actually categorically states that Netaji died. But then when you put it in the context and compare it with the other accounts and reports, it doesn't match. As a result, the British government never said, even when Mountbatten was asked many years later whether he had any evidence, Mountbatten said that we never found any conclusive evidence. And the same reports were given to Jawaharlal Nehru. He also went through all those reports. He had seen all those reports. And when he was asked categorically whether he can produce any evidence, he said, I have no direct evidence. I have no direct evidence. I have no direct proof. So that was the thing about the Allied Forces investigation. Then and obviously nobody was convinced about the story. So the Indians in India wanted a proper inquiry and investigation, and they petitioned repeatedly to Pandit Nehru and Sardar Patel. But Pandit Nehru took a very categorical stand that he believed that Netaji was dead and there was no need for any inquiry. So what these group of people in India, they said that fine, if you don't want to do it, we will do it unofficially, an independent citizens inquiry. We will raise funds and we will do it on our own. So being threatened by that prospect, Pandit Nehru set up the Shahnawaz Committee. Now, the Shahnawaz Committee obviously spoke. It was an in-camera inquiry where basically people came and gave their statements. There was no cross-examination by other parties. There was no lawyer representing the different parties. And they took up the statements, and despite all the contradictions and all the loopholes, somehow he reached the conclusion that Netaji was dead. But obviously, even that, it was clear that the report was so full of loopholes and problems that it convinced nobody except the government of India. In 1955, this Shahnawaz Committee was set up in 1956. And just around that time, an inquiry was conducted by the Taiwan government, at the behest of the government of India. The government of India did not have any direct diplomatic relation with Taiwan, so they could not request directly. They asked the British government, and the British government asked the Taiwanese government to conduct an inquiry. So they conducted an inquiry and sent a report to the Britishers, which was forwarded to the uh, government of India. And the government of India suppressed that report very nicely. It was later on shown to Justice Khosla during the second commission of inquiry, but after that it was suppressed and it was not shown to Justice Mukherjee in the third commission of inquiry. So after this, the public opinion kind of kept on that same level that uh, the plane crash story does not add up. It is not believable, and new information kept coming in from various sources, from different countries, from Russia, from China. Various claims were made and different new angles were coming up. So another movement built up, and in the late 1960s, this movement was led by Professor Samar Guha, and he collected all the members of parliament at that time and pressurized the Indira Gandhi government to set up a new commission. And this time it was a judicial commission, which Indira Gandhi set up under the chairmanship of G.D. Khosla. Now, G.D. Khosla was a very well-known judge, but he was also a very close friend of Indira Gandhi and Jawaharlal Nehru. In fact, I mean, when he went abroad for his inquiry, he was shopping for Indira Gandhi. He was found to be shopping for Indira Gandhi. At the time, he was writing a biography of Indira Gandhi. So,
Yeah.
I mean, his credentials, when these facts became known, his credentials were absolutely compromised. And although he reached the same conclusion as Shanwas committee, but he did not address the loopholes, and the problem remained. And these two inquiries, I mean, it is now well known that were kind of rejected by the Prime Minister Morarji Desai when he announced on the floor of Lok Sabha that new information have come in, which now make the conclusions of this committee and the commission invalid. But it was too far away from the time of the plane crash, and setting up a new commission of inquiry did not make sense. So that's where the matter rested for a long time, and it opened up when the Narasimha Rao government wanted to give Bharat Ratna, posthumous Bharat Ratna to Netaji, and then the next HD Devagowda government wanted to bring back the ashes from Renkoji Temple in Tokyo. Then a case was filed in the Kolkata High Court, a PIL was filed, and before that, a PIL was filed in the Rajasthan High Court, and the Rajasthan High Court asked the central government to conduct an inquiry, but the central government ignored it. Now, in 1997, the Kolkata High Court asked the government to set up a fresh inquiry. Now, when this PIL was going on, this case was going on in the Kolkata High Court, the government's own lawyer admitted in front of the court, now this is on record, that there were too many loopholes in the inquiries conducted by Shanwas Committee and Khosla Commission, and those cannot be trusted. So a new commission was set up under the order of the High Court, and which was the Justice Mukherjee Commission of Inquiry, set up in 1999. And after 6 years of inquiry, Justice Mukherjee reached the conclusion. He addressed all the loopholes which were previously highlighted, and clearly, methodically, and legally demonstrated that the story of the plane crash was just a hoax. It was a cover-up for Netaji to be able to escape from the Southeast Asian theater of war.